Then we will, after my program of Wolves 101, it'll be followed by Aaron and Aspen from Lobos of the Southwest. They'll be doing a program about the Mexican wolf historic ranges, current ranges, what's happening in conservation, coexistence. And finally, Pam from Wolf Haven, she will give us an update on what's happening on the ground here and in Mexico and a little bit more in depth. And then we'll sum everything up with the Q&A. So please, the cliche I know is, no dumb questions, don't feel embarrassed. Please, this is why we're doing this program, is ask anything and we'll answer it to the best of our ability. I want to have everybody say hello before we get started. First, I want to introduce Faye, who is Wolf Haven's Director of Education, coming to you by way of Washington. And then Erin from Lobos of the Southwest, and she's actually out in California, and Aspen from Lobos of the Southwest in New York. And then Pamela is on site from Wolf Haven. She basically takes care of our wolves round the clock, nonstop, giving top-notch care to our animals, plus is the Mexican wolf liaison. So it's going to be a great program tonight. I think I will go ahead and get started. So Wolf Haven is a nonprofit sanctuary for captive-born wolves. We're located in a small farming community called Tenino, Washington, which is just over an hour south of Seattle. We house our animals in male-female pairs. And just a little bit more, I said that Wolf Haven is a sanctuary for captive-born wolves. So all of our animals come to us through captivity. We don't do anything with wolves in the wild. Basically, folks that have wolves and wolf dogs, and they think it's a great idea to have them as a pet. Two sides of the coin. The first side is they've self-educated and realized that wolves and wolf dogs do not make good pets. And so we get tons of phone calls asking if we can take their quote unquote pet. And sadly, because we don't have tons and tons of land and tons of money to save every animal, if we can't save that animal, we have a wonderful network throughout the United States and try to house that animal. But you understand the sad part of the story is these animals end up being euthanized if there's nowhere to place them. So number one message is wolves and wolf dogs do not make good pets. So at our sanctuary, we house our animals in male-female pairs. Wolves are monogamous, and I'll say a lot of things in quotes because in nature there are exceptions to the rules. Sometimes the breeding male might breed with a subordinate, but as a general, wolves are monogamous. So we want to house them in male-female pairs because that makes them have the most peaceful, happiest life. Perhaps putting two females together, two males together, there might be a little more squabbling or fighting over food. So theoretically, that will give them the best life. We are open to the public by way of reservation for visits. However, because of the COVID situation, we're currently not open. Please continue to check our website because one day we'd like to be able to have by reservation visitors come and get. You can't see all of the wolves. They're not all on exhibit, but you will go with a visitor guide and see a few of our animals. Now, whereas dogs have 2 litters of puppies a year, Wolves are seasonal breeders. They breed once a year. Breeding season's January to March. The farther north you go, the later they breed. The gestation period is about 63 days. So you can approximately say that a wolf's birthday is around early May. Some wolf dog differences is male dogs are sexually mature about 6 months old, and female dogs maybe about 12 to 16 months old. But both male and female wolves are sexually mature about 22 months of age and seldom breed till after that. And one real important thing I should say, with our sanctuary residents, we do give them all vasectomies and partial hysterectomies. So that allows them to pair bond. The endocrine system works so that the hormones are naturally released, but of course doesn't result in puppies. Now, another thing we do at Wolf Haven, and what the Lobos Mexican Wolf Program will be about tonight, is we are involved in the SSP, Species Survival Program, which is headed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and partners with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums and other non-AZA participants, such as Wolf Haven being a sanctuary. And that is for the very endangered red wolf and the endangered Mexican wolf. The red wolf is a separate species, so currently recognized in North America are the two species of wolves, the gray and the red, and then the Mexican wolf is a subspecies of gray wolf. So like another subspecies would be an Arctic, a timber. The SSP program started in 1981. So just to clarify, I know it's a lot of information already. At Wolf Haven, we have two groups of wolves. Our sanctuary residents that will live there for life. They're the ones that we have rescued from folks who, again, have self-educated and realizing wolves and wolf dogs don't make good pets. Or perhaps on the other side of the coin that I didn't mention in the beginning is the people that haven't self-educated and will find out about a sad hoarding situation or a sad situation where we do have the space to be able to rescue an animal that somebody is not relinquishing. So the only time we do breed is for the Species Survival SSP program for the endangered red wolf and the endangered Mexican wolf. So I like to show the difference between wolves and coyotes, because a lot of times people have a hard time understanding or telling the difference. So just physically here, the coyote overall, besides being a smaller animal, is a much pointier animal. You can see the coyote has a pointier ear, the pointier muzzle. The wolf is the white animal, has the broader muzzle, the rounder ear. They both have an almond-shaped amber-colored eye. As puppies, their eyes are blue, but when they grow up, they don't have blue eyes or brown eyes like dogs. They have an amber eye when they're growing up. And they both have black noses, black lips, and black toenails. And I'm really fond of this illustration. I think it really shows the difference between that pointiness of the coyote compared to the more broad wolf. And of course, in the winter, in cold climates, the coyote can get a pretty big coat itself, but in general, you can see that pointiness. And if we want to look here at the difference physically between wolves and dogs, the wolf is the animal with its legs close together, and the dog here is the breed of a Malamute. Now, though all dogs originally came from wolves and we bred them to do certain jobs for us, I don't have a French bulldog or a Chihuahua here just because they're not very wolfy, but certain dog breeds are still pretty wolfy, like the Malamute, like the Husky, not just because they look wolfy compared to, say, a Chihuahua, but other behaviors, a lot of them are more wolfy. A lot of Huskies and Malamutes will howl. They're very tactile. Wolves are very tactile animals. They use their mouths like hands. They'll kind of grab muzzles on one another, and that doesn't necessarily mean aggression. It could just be a playful thing, like if you were holding hands. And they use their paws a lot. So the wolf pack is a family. And the importance of the pack, most important, I should say, is two things. Number one, and obviously most important, is survival. Being a carnivore, that's how this carnivore hunts, with teamwork, compared to, say, a cougar. A cougar is an ambush style predator that hunts alone. And then obviously, as we see here, and we know from our dogs, very, very social animals, very important to have that socialization. So a wolf family has the breeding pair. And if you know the term alpha, the alpha doesn't mean just the random strongest animal in the pack. The alpha male, the alpha female basically means the mother and father. And then the yearlings, and then the pups. So 3 generations till those yearlings, again, sexually mature about 22 months of age and will start dispersing. Wolves primarily eat ungulates. I say primarily because there are wolves in British Columbia that catch salmon and seals. A lot of people ask me, I've heard that wolves eat mice and rabbits and blueberries. And of course, as a snack, they can eat blueberries and such, but that wouldn't sustain them. The ungulate organs and meat is what would sustain them. And I also like to say, those of you that have dogs, some of our dogs are real strict carnivores and are real picky. And some of our dogs will eat carrots and bananas and all kinds of things. And I could even say that compared to us, how if we're picky eaters or if we're vegetarians or what we eat. So really, when people talk about wolves eating mice or blueberries or different things, that has a lot to do with individual preference and taste. And of course, like I said, that would just be a snack or if they are absolutely starving. On that note, wolves are only successful 1 out of 10 efforts to make a kill, to get lunch. They have a feast or famine lifestyle. The term wolf down your food, meaning you figure a wolf pack is out chasing a herd and they're unsuccessful. Next day they chase another herd, they're unsuccessful, expanding all that energy. They're getting weak and tired. So when they do finally catch something and make a kill, they're really going to sit and gorge themselves. And of course, their prey with their sharp hooves, antlers, and horns can also hurt the wolves. It's been documented a lot of wild wolves will walk around with broken ribs from being kicked in the ribs from one of the ungulate hooves. The importance of wolves in the ecosystem is really keeping the herds healthy. Wolves are going after the sick animals, the young ones, the old ones. They're not going after the big, strong animals because they're hardest to catch. Of course, what they want to do is get the herd on the run to kind of check out who is sick and who is old and who's an easier lunch. If one of the healthy animals is running through the snow and twists its ankle, of course, they're going to be able to catch a healthier animal. But in general, they're keeping the herds healthy by weeding out the sickness. And there is something called the sanitation effect. And that's basically, if one of the elk, let's say, has chronic wasting disease or has some disease and is going to get the rest of the herd sick and it's fatal, well, the wolves are going to take that elk out of the herd. Sanitation effect being cleansing the herd from disease. Now the herd won't all get that disease because the wolf has now eaten that sick animal. And I don't have too much more time, but if you've heard the term trophic cascades, you can Google that after this if you have not heard that term, trophic cascades. That's basically also how wolves kind of keep the landscape healthy too. And it's again the food web, how it affects the chain from top to bottom. The red area here is where wolves are currently located in the world. The gray area historically represented the gray wolf, and the red portion of the map historically represented the red wolf. You can see by the 1970s, due to US Fish and Wildlife Service predator control programs, we eradicated the wolves from the lower 48. I know this is a small map, but if you notice on the tip of Minnesota, there were still a few surviving wild wolves, which were deemed the magic pack. 2021, here's where wolves currently live in the lower 48. Pardon me. 2 things I want to point out here. There's natural recolonization and reintroduction. So we're familiar, I should not assume anything. Most people have heard of the Yellowstone wolf reintroduction. And after the original wolves in 1995 and 1996 from British Columbia were reintroduced into Yellowstone National Park, all those wolves naturally recolonized throughout the Northern Rockies. And if we look at the Great Lakes area, we saw on the previous map, those few wild wolves deemed the magic pack in Minnesota So all the Great Lakes wolves have not been reintroduced. They have naturally recolonized. What we'll be discussing this evening, Arizona and New Mexico, that is our reintroduction of the Lobos, and that little tip on North Carolina, reintroduction of the red wolf. And actually the red wolf reintroduction was the first reintroduction before Yellowstone. Most people, Yellowstone has been, more popular, but the red wolf was actually the first reintroduction. And if we're looking on into the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, California, all these wolves are naturally recolonizing. There's nothing in our Washington, California, or Oregon state management plan that allots for reintroduction. This is all how do we manage and conserve as they naturally recolonize. So of course, we know very well the negative connotation of the big bad wolf and all the folklore and stories that have historically come with it. Historically and still today, a lot of our movies, and this is a commercial for a cough syrup, and it shows here that the wolf is going to give this baby whooping cough. So if you're hiking in wolf country, you encounter a wolf or a pack of wolves, should you fear for your life like all these negative connotations show us? Absolutely not. Of all the predators, wolves are actually the one that you don't need to be afraid of compared to, say, cougars, because they have that ambush style form of hunting. They might be a little bit more sneakier up in a tree. Bottom line, if you see a wolf in the wild, that's pretty cool. The chances of it being curious about you is probably because it's a young individual and it would just be curious. The chances of actually being attacked by a wolf would only be, which has been documented, wolves that have been highly habituated to people such as on the pipeline in Alaska. A lot of the workers there were feeding wolf sandwiches. Anytime a wolf has been in trouble with the human, it has been habituated to people. So anything you've heard about cougars or bears or predators in general, you want to never run from a predator. I like to always say that it's in their DNA. Predators chase things that run. Always just be calm, stand bold, clap your hands, tell them to move on. One thing you don't want to do, though, if you know that you'll be backpacking in wolf country, is probably leave your dogs at home, because wolves do view dogs as competitors for food and territory. So you can definitely get into some trouble with your dogs if you're in wolf territory. I want to end my program tonight showing some fun videos of canid communication. These are the wolves at Wolf Haven. Canids embodying wolves, coyotes, jackals, foxes, dogs, but we'll use the videos of our wolves. The number one scent for wolves is their sense of smell. So if a wolf is blind or deaf, as long as they have a good nose, and obviously applies for dogs and other canids, good nose is going to still get them around. So looking here at body language, Shadow's the gray wolf and Juno's the white colored wolf. Juno just showed some dominance. Shadow's tail, again, the gray colored wolf, is a normal posturing, just down. Right now he's bowing down, so he's showing respect. Juno's tail is a little bit waggy, a little higher. She's showing a little bit more dominance, a little play. I talked how they're tactile. You can see how they're using their mouths and their paws, very touchy on one another. They're not overly excited. There's no aggression. They're just simply enjoying one another's company. If there was a little bit of aggression or tension, the hackles would go up on their neck and the tails would get stiffer. If, let's say, Shadow, the gray wolf, was feeling fearful, his tail would tuck between his legs. A lot of us know that from our dogs. And here we can see a little scent rolling. The scent rolling in the wild, perhaps if there's a wolf that's strayed away from the pack and has found just making up a scenario, a deer that died of natural causes might scent roll on that deer and come back to the pack and say, hey, we don't need to work so hard for our food today. Look what I got. So a lot of times it's just a novel smell. You can see she has great pleasure in that. I don't like to talk over them. So whining, everything is intention. Whining can be a playful sound. Obviously, it can be a sad sound. Growling can be a sense of play. Everything is intention. The one thing with barking, though, with wolves compared to dogs, dogs can do a play bow with their butt up in the air and, you know, give that play bark like, come on, you know, chase me, let's go. Whereas when wolves bark, it's kind of a huffing, it's a little bit of a huffing bark that is basically called a warning bark. They're not really having the play bark. So their intention for barking is really just, you're stressing me out. I appreciate it if you back off a bit. And we have to obviously sum things up with howling. This is one of our wolf dogs, Klondike. And what I want you to notice here is you'll hear Klondike howl and observe his body language. And in the background, you'll hear some of the other sanctuary residents. And just notice the tone and the body language to try to interpret what they are saying. I thought I had that so that it would start without a click. So I'm gonna have to explain the last video today. So if you work at Wolf Haven, just like our voices, even if you didn't see me, but you knew me, you would know my voice. So same thing with that Wolf Haven. As you get to know each individual, you can walk into the sanctuary and pick out whose voice is what. But I will say one day when you are able to come visit Wolf Haven again, Coyote is one wolf that even if you only come one time, you will always, and Coyote, I should also clarify, is a wolf dog. Coyote, his voice is so distinctive, you will always know who Coyote is. So as far as making a difference, please write letters and speak out to your representatives. Become a Wolf Haven member. You can follow us on Facebook, and you can adopt or sponsor a wolf, obviously symbolically. With the holidays coming up, you can go ahead and look at wolfhaven.org. It's obviously a meaningful gift. There's all different levels of sponsorships and adoptions. And without further ado, I'm going to now turn the program over to Aaron and Aspen from Lobos of the Southwest.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and get started. I need to share my screen really fast. Is everyone seeing this? All right. So Lobos of the Southwest is a collaborative effort of conservation organizations, scientists, educators, and volunteers working to recover the critically endangered Mexican gray wolf. Our shared vision is a future in which healthy, viable populations of Mexican gray wolves restore the natural balance to southwestern landscapes, keep elk and deer herds healthy, and restore the natural functioning of entire ecosystems. Mexican gray wolves are valued by southwestern residents and visitors as an intrinsic part of our natural heritage and as beautiful, intelligent wild animals that contribute to our quality of life. The Mexican gray wolf is a distinct subspecies of gray wolf that helps keep nature in balance. They are top predators who prey on native ungulates, helping keep prey populations at sustainable levels and preventing overgrazing. They selectively kill weak and diseased members of a herd, keeping herds healthier. Smaller carnivores, scavengers, and birds of prey also benefit from their presence, since wolf kills typically provide more food than a pack can consume at once. Because of the relationships wolves have with many other species, we call them a keystone species and engineers of biodiversity. They are native to the southwestern United States and Mexico and have a critical role in ecosystems there. Before federal predator control efforts, thousands of Mexican gray wolves roamed the Southwest and Mexico. Predator eradication campaigns resulted in Mexican gray wolves being hunted, trapped, and poisoned to near extinction. Due to fear of wolves and efforts to exterminate them, Mexican gray wolves came within 7 unrelated individuals of being extinct. They were declared extinct in the wild and were added to the United States Endangered Species List in 1976. A binational captive breeding program was established to save them, and Mexican gray wolves were reintroduced into Arizona and New Mexico beginning in 1998, and Mexico beginning in 2011. Efforts to restore these unique wolves came after we gained a better understanding of their role as top predators. However, much of the fear and misunderstanding surrounding wolves remains. There are currently a minimum of 186 Mexican gray wolves living in the wild in Arizona and New Mexico, and about 35 to 40 wolves in Mexico. Mexican gray wolves are still considered one of the rarest land mammals we have here in North America, and despite of progress we have made so far. Human-caused mortality is still the #1 threat to Mexican gray wolves. We have been able to successfully breed them in captivity and reintroduce them in Arizona, New Mexico, and Mexico, but we still have a lot to do to recover these critically endangered wolves. Because all Mexican gray wolves alive today are descended from the 7 unrelated founders, most wild Mexican gray wolves are closely related to each other as full siblings. This lack of gene diversity also continues to put the subspecies at risk. But hope is not lost. Thanks to the dedicated efforts of conservation organizations in zoos and the Mexican Wolf Species Survival Plan, or SSP, along with researchers, educators, volunteers, other conservation groups, and tribal, state, and federal agencies, we have opportunities to ensure that Mexican gray wolves get the second chance they deserve. So how exactly do we go about accomplishing that? You can consider Mexican wolf recovery efforts to have 2 important and complementary components. One that begins in captivity and another that begins in the wild. We truly believe that we cannot succeed without both. The decisions we make about captive management impact the wild, and the decisions we make about recovery in the wild impact our captive population. Everything is interconnected, and we have to understand how these 2 aspects of our work combine into a holistic approach to saving wolves. The Mexican Wolf Species Survival Plan is the captive breeding program for critically endangered Mexican gray wolves. Its mission includes not only carefully managed captive breeding, but also research to better understand and protect Mexican wolves. Education and public outreach to raise awareness of how special these animals are and how much they need our help, and supporting reintroduction in the wild through release and cross-fostering. This SSP is special because nearly every wolf in the program is considered a candidate for potential release, so we have some unique challenges and opportunities caring for them in captivity. We need to keep them as wild as possible to ensure that Mexican gray wolves can be returned to parts of their former range. Captive breeding efforts began in the 1970s, and the work of the Mexican Wolf SSP remains an essential component of Mexican wolf recovery in the wild. Not only did the captive breeding program save the subspecies from extinction, the captive breeding population is the main source of gene diversity that will ensure the long-term health and survival of Mexican gray wolves. Approximately 60 institutions participate in the SSP in both the United States and Mexico, and we applaud their tireless efforts to hold extinction at bay and educate people about these rare wolves. As the captive breeding program was established in the late 70s and early 80s, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service convened a recovery team in 1979 to turn their attention toward how Mexican gray wolves could be restored to their wild homes in the southwestern U.S. and Mexico. By 1982, a recovery plan laid out a basic roadmap for conserving Mexican gray wolves and reestablishing a wild population. On March 29, 1998, captive reared wolves were released into the wild for the first time in the Blue Range Wolf Recovery Area that spanned eastern Arizona and western New Mexico. These pioneering wolves overcame uncertainty about whether or not captive-born wolves could be returned to the wild. While their journey would not be easy, their paws took the first steps toward freedom and recovery. In the US, Mexican wolf restoration is a cooperative effort between 5 co-led agencies: Arizona Game and Fish Department, White Mountain Apache Tribe, U.S. Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, Wildlife Services, U.S. Forest Service, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. There are additional cooperating agencies and advisory groups that contribute as well. An interagency field team, or IFT, carries out the on-the-ground activities for the Mexican Wolf Recovery Program. The IFT is a collaboration between federal, state, and tribal partners working together to manage wild Mexican gray wolves. In Mexico, counterpart natural resources and wildlife agencies, as well as researchers and private landowners, collaborate to support Mexican wolf recovery. Another key component of recovery in the wild involves training future generations in wildlife management and conservation. Field volunteers assist with wolf population monitoring, livestock conflict avoidance projects, and an outreach to community members living with wolves. These highly trained volunteers provide additional support to the Mexican wolf interagency field team. Volunteers assist with trapping and radio collaring wild wolves, and then monitoring these wolves through telemetry and analysis of GPS data. They provide additional ground support for the annual population survey of Mexican gray wolves, one of the most comprehensive methods of obtaining data on the wild populations. They help implement conflict avoidance projects such as diversionary food caches that reduce the risk of livestock predation. They assist with releases and translocations and with wolf monitoring after these important management actions. The follow-up monitoring is crucial for evaluating the success of these operations and for providing immediate emergency support if there is a safety concern for a wolf or risk of livestock predation. Volunteers participate in several ongoing research projects, including a predation study that aims to learn more about the diet of wild Mexican gray wolves and any impacts on native ungulate populations. The volunteers also search for tracks, scat, and other sign of wolf activity to learn as much as they can about where wild wolf packs are moving out on the landscape. And they assist with non-invasive population monitoring, including through the review of trail cam footage. These observations are particularly important after denning season, as the data collected can help document pup survival and has even provided evidence of survival of cross-fostered pups. So what is cross-fostering? Cross-fostering is an innovative technique that allows us to improve the gene diversity of the wild population while giving young pups the behavioral benefits of growing up with experienced wild parents. Young pups less than 2 weeks of age can be fostered into the den of wild wolf pack. Because wolves are such good parents, they readily adopt pups, even when they aren't biologically related. We believe that releases of family groups, bonded pairs with pups, are a critical immediate need for Mexican wolf conservation, but we support cross-fostering as an important long-term strategy for achieving a sustainable wild population. While no one knows what the future will hold when we send pups out to the field, it is good to know that pups have a chance at life in the wild.
Since 2016, 72 pups have been cross-fostered from the captive breeding program into the wild, and the numbers are going up each year to a record of 22 pups in 2021. However, according to Mexican Wolf Interagency Field Team data, only 7 of these wolves are currently documented as surviving as of June 2021. Of these, only 7 have survived to breeding age, and only 3 have had pups of their own. While these are minimum numbers, there may be additional surviving cross-fosters in the wild, but 3 wolves being able to start families of their own over 5 years will not be sufficient to achieve the genetic rescue needed to ensure the long-term survival of the Mexican gray wolf. The Mexican Wolf SSP should be celebrated for their contributions to cross-fostering, but they can do so much more to support wild wolf recovery if they're also allowed to release bonded packs who could immediately boost the size of the wild population, improve gene diversity through the release of wolves that are already of breeding age, and expand the range occupied by wolves. needs a little more history that can remind us of how far we've come, but also how far we still have to go. In the early 2000s, there were policies in effect that made it very difficult to be a wild Mexican wolf. One of these was Standard Operating Procedure 13, or SOP 13, a 3 strikes and you're out rule. 3 incidents of livestock predation could result in a wolf being killed or permanently removed from the wild. When this was implemented in 2005, the number of wolves killed or captured annually increased to double digits, and our wild population hit a plateau and struggled to grow. With such a small and genetically fragile population, we realized we needed to do so much more than simply breed wolves in captivity and hope for the best if a wolf was released. Recognizing that this increase in removal orders was in response to intolerance and fear of wolves, we needed to find a way to increase acceptance in communities living with Mexican wolves and change the cultures of agencies managing wolves to reduce reliance on killing. These efforts eventually resulted in the end of SOP 13, but we couldn't stop there. The story of the Southwestern landscape is one that contains challenges as humans impact the unique and fragile ecosystems found there. But the story also tells of a second chance to correct the mistakes of the past and restore this landscape. It's a story of hope, and the effort to reintroduce Mexican gray wolves is very much a part of that hope for a wilder future. We could tell the story of why our work matters by looking at it through the eyes of a family in the Southwest. I used to work with a family who's ranched on the same land in Arizona for over 130 years in an area with multiple wolf packs and dispersing wolves. They're out with their cattle and their dogs every day, making sure everyone is doing well. This family knows what it feels like to lose cattle, horses, and dogs to predation, but they haven't given up hope. They've worked with nonprofits and agencies for over 10 years to implement solutions and successfully reduce wolf predation, saving the lives of the wolves that call the area home. But why am I talking about ranching when you all thought we would be here talking about wolves? While we may have valid questions and concerns about the impacts of ranching on our environment, this is one family that's trying to do things right, with stewardship of the land and passion for native wildlife. Their story also illustrates social tolerance. In spite of this family's losses, they now have more positive things to say about the Mexican Wolf Recovery Program. And positive word of mouth in communities living with wolves can be hard to come by and has huge value in ensuring wolves and other predators are allowed to thrive in their wild homes. I also hope that their story inspires empathy. We want people to have empathy with wolves, but we may be more effective in that plea when we also cultivate empathy for the communities living with them. We may not be familiar with ranching ourselves, but we've all felt losses. We all have hopes and dreams and fears. We probably know what it feels like to deeply love a place and have a place feel like home. We could also choose to tell our story through the eyes of a wolf, exploring what it means to be a wolf on a modern landscape heavily impacted by human activity. What would it be like to find food? What would it be like to raise a family? Wolves like M1384, nicknamed Phoenix, and the Fox Mountain Pack could tell the story of what it's like to be wild and then have a different future because of the limits of human tolerance. Phoenix's pack was removed from the wild due to livestock predation, and some pack members were even killed. The Mexican Wolf SSP provided the survivors with a safe haven so that they would still have a future. But the fact remains that these wolves were removed from the wild because of human rules that they do not know about or understand. We could ask ourselves what their future might have looked like had we written the rules differently. We can continue to tell our story through Phoenix and his mate Frida and their amazing parenting skills in the captive breeding program. Some of their pups may start families of their own, and some even got a chance to be fostered into the wild. We can see the Fox Mountain Pack living on through Phoenix to his pups and maybe even grandpuppies someday. And there is hope in that legacy, as these wolves teach us just how capable they are of surviving and thriving in the face of adversity. We can see that one wolf can make a difference in the survival of a species. Perhaps one of the biggest barriers to recovery is a human one, the lack of tolerance for wolves and other carnivores. But there are solutions that work for both wolves and people. With coexistence techniques, our goal is to save the lives of individual wolves and packs, allowing them to survive in the wild and raise their families successfully. We continue to have record-breaking years of both livestock predation and illegal killing of Mexican gray wolves. And we've also seen an increase in government removals of wolves, with 2020 being the worst year for removals since 2006, back when SOP 13 was still in effect. We must do more to break the cycle of conflict so that both wolves and people can thrive. High levels of livestock predation and decreased social tolerance put wolves at risk. Conflict between wolves and livestock and conflict between diverse groups of people who may have different ways of valuing land and wildlife continue to threaten wolves. And unless we can rise above that challenge and learn from the past, we run the risk of history repeating itself, the risk of losing these animals to extinction forever. Some of our partners work to support Mexican wolf conservation through proactive non-lethal techniques that reduce conflicts between wolves and livestock, including sponsoring range riders and field volunteers. We talked about field volunteers a bit earlier, but what do range riders do in the Southwest? Range riders manage livestock in ways that reduce predation risks and improve livestock health. This is about keeping wolves alive and in the wild without risk of being killed or captured. By focusing on proactive, low-stress livestock management and progressive ranching techniques, ranchers can protect livestock and ensure that the most sensitive habitat remains available for wildlife. This can be a vision that is less about managing wolves and more about prioritizing wolf conservation. Wolves and their native prey can coexist in a landscape that is also home to people and livestock. With changes in livestock husbandry, livestock do not need to remain the most vulnerable prey on that landscape. Importantly, sometimes this means moving livestock away from critical habitat that wolves need to survive, especially when it's not possible to otherwise prevent conflict with livestock. Several other partners focus on this type of preventative measure as well. Whatever the techniques used, preventing conflict saves lives and chips away at the fear of wolves that continues to threaten their futures. From the care that we provide for wolves in the captive breeding program, to the influence we have on agency, culture, and policy, to community partnerships that protect wild wolves, through these small grassroots efforts, we can have big effects on people, landscapes, and wolves. One important opportunity to create change from the grassroots up is the Mexican wolf 10J management rule. Because Mexican gray wolves were wiped out in the wild and needed to be reintroduced, their management in the wild is covered by a special section of the Endangered Species Act that governs experimental populations and a series of policies called the 10J management rule. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is currently revising this rule, which a federal court found does not rely on the best available science and violates the Endangered Species Act by failing to conserve the Mexican wolf. In 2020, in response to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's request for public input, 87,000 comments were submitted requesting that the agency follow the court order and base the revised rule on independent academic science rather than political pressure. A science-based 10J rule will designate Mexican gray wolves as essential, giving them full protection under the law. It will allow expansion and dispersal so Mexican wolves can play their natural role as top predators. It will address the crisis of declining genetic diversity and support the release of bonded wolf families into the wild, taking into consideration the highly social nature of wolves. It will limit human-caused mortality, and it will include firm requirements to prevent conflicts with livestock and support non-lethal resolution of conflicts. Mexican wolves need all of us to facilitate policy changes that give them the freedom to roam and expand to suitable habitat, including places like the Grand Canyon ecoregion. Science tells us that we need at least 750 to 1,000 Mexican wolves in several populations, 3 in the United States and 1 in Mexico. We have an opportunity to tell U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to follow the science and eliminate the existing population cap currently set at 320 wolves and remove the northern boundary currently marked at Interstate 40. There will be additional opportunities to comment on the 10J rule in 2021. So check MexicanWolves.org for updates and ways that you can help. Another barrier to recovery, literally and figuratively, is lack of habitat connectivity. Wolves are a wide-ranging species that naturally disperses, traveling from their birth packs, sometimes for hundreds or thousands of miles. They need freedom from political barriers and safe ways to cross physical barriers, such as wildlife crossings near highways. Since wolves have not yet established themselves in some of the best available habitat, we need to ensure that there are linkages across the landscape that will allow for wolves to successfully return to these areas. We also need to ensure that populations in Mexico and the US remain connected to maintain gene flow between them. We don't need everyone to love wolves, but we do need them to feel that they can successfully live with wolves. We're cross-fostering more pups every year, giving them a chance to grow up in the wild. But what kind of life will that be if we don't also take steps to safeguard their future by doing everything that we can to prevent wolf livestock conflict, illegal killings, and heavy-handed government management? If we believe that wolves can thrive in suitable habitat when we take steps to ensure viable populations and genetic diversity, then we must also invest in increasing social tolerance. I hope that we can all make a commitment to build a diverse community of supporters who will ensure that wolves will roam the landscape for generations to come. So what can you do to help? You can volunteer your time, making you a valuable partner in Mexican gray wolf conservation. You can help us submit comments when the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service begins the next phase of their updates to the 10-day management rule. So stay tuned for more info and how on when you can comment. You can follow us on social media and share your favorite messages about wolves. And you can also support the nonprofit community working to save Mexican gray wolves by making a contribution to an organization like Wolf Haven or Lobos of the Southwest. If you'd like more information, please feel free to reach out to us. I'd also like to introduce our next panelist, Pam, by saying that the same way wolves need to connect without boundaries, people do too. The Mexican wolf species survival plan is an example of a success story of people collaborating across national boundaries and through language barriers to recover Mexican gray wolves in the wild. I want to thank everyone in the SSP for everything that you do every day for wild Lobos and the Lobos in your care. And with that, I want to hand it off to Pam.
Hi, hola a todos. Voy a empezar a compartir mi pantalla. Quiero mandar un saludo a toda la gente que veo que se ha unido desde México. Un gustazo. Un segundo, por favor. Okay. There we go. Okay. Faye, can you see that okay?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, perfect. As I say, hi to everyone. Hola a todos. This is going to be a short presentation, but we want to for sure include the collaborative effort between Mexico and the US to preserve the Mexican wolf, which is crucial. I'm going to be saying some pieces in Spanish, some in English, so we'll be doing a little bit of everything. And at the end, if you have any questions that you want to address in Spanish, feel free. I'm happy to help with some translation. So to start, I wanted to share a little clip. This is not the highest quality video because our remote cameras in the sanctuary, you know, they have to go through a long cable of internet. But I just wanted to show mostly why we do this, right? So that we could preserve the Mexican wolf by providing, in this case, captive breeding opportunities as an SSP facility. So this is a small clip of last year's litter of Mexican wolves born to F1422 and M1360. There is no sound, so don't worry if you don't hear anything, because that's how our remote cameras work. This is the very first time. You can see the date is May 19, 2020. This is the first time that the pups come out of the den, called by the mom, who in-house we call Vida. Para los que están allí en México, ahorita no hay sonido, o sea que no se están perdiendo el sonido, pero este es un clip del año pasado, en primavera del año pasado. La hembra 1422 y el macho 1360 fueron recomendados para ser pareja reproductora y fueron exitosos y tuvieron una camada de 9 cachorros. I know it's really hard to see with the resolution, but we were so excited because not only to see them and see them doing well, but then we started counting, because that was the first time we were like counting them, because we try to be as little invasive as possible, stay away from them and let them be. And so we were 1, 2, 3, and they kept coming out and we were like, oh my God. And they were 9. 1 didn't make it, but the rest did. And so what are the expectations as an SSP institution? First of all, I want to tell you that as Aspen and Erin said, SSP means a species survival plan, and it is a captivating program for conservation purposes started by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, AZA, and they have SSPs for different species. Wolf Haven, as Ssp mentioned, participates in the Red Wolf and the Mexican Wolf SSPs. As an SSP institution, we have responsibilities, right? Including the ones listed there. So I'm going to say them in Spanish. Tenemos que darle albergo a los lobos mexicanos y proveerles de una calidad de vida alta y un buen cuidado. Tenemos que atacar las recomendaciones de transferencias y reproducción que el programa dicta. Tenemos que proveer de adultos, familias para liberaciones, en este caso, más que nada ahorita en México para los adultos, y en el caso de Estados Unidos, proveer de cachorros para cross-fostering. También podemos contribuir con investigaciones, información que pueda ser útil para el programa por otras instituciones, siempre y cuando sea apropiado y no estemos afectando a los animales, y hacer programas educativos acerca de la especie. Y la propagación cautiva ahorita se cuenta entre temporadas reproductivas. Entre el 2020 y el 2021 se cuentan 385 lobos en 62 instituciones, 25 están en México y 37 en Estados Unidos. Y como ven allá abajo, la población objetivo era de 300 individuos. So I'm just reading the slide and then pointing out that, as you can notice at the bottom of the screen, it says there was a population objective for the program of 300 individuals. So that means we're doing something right? And we'll talk about what we're doing good and some of the challenges. We of course provide animal care, and this is like all the SSP institutions. So big shout out to all of the people that take care of these animals on a daily basis. Every single day, we cannot, skip anything, as you know. And it goes anywhere from taking care of the animals directly when we have to do handling, health checks, vaccinations, move them around in different enclosures or institutions, but also the basic care of everyday monitoring, feeding them. And one really fun thing about this program that is very exciting, because it shows how good humans can be at collaborating when we want to, when we have a common goal, is the annual binational meetings. We have them every year. They happen in summer, usually in July, sometimes in August, and we take turns in the US and Mexico hosting the meeting. You have an example there of a meeting that happened in person in Chico, Montana, Chico Springs, Hot Springs, in 2016. In the photo there, you have Xochitl, who is now our Mexican co-chair for the SSP for the Mexican Wolf, and some other colleagues, and they are making decisions about what are the best things to do with the wolves in the different facilities. On the right, you have a screenshot, sorry, of the virtual meeting that happened this last year. And so because of the COVID situation, we had to come up with ideas, new ideas, right? Like everyone, we adjusted and we hosted our first virtual meeting in 2020. We had to do the same this year in 2021. And we're expecting that next year is gonna have to be virtual again. What happens in those meetings? So everyone gets together, especially agencies that are involved in decisions like US Fish and Wildlife Service, and in Mexico is Semarnat and CONAMP, and all the institutions, they have a representative per institution to, you know, give recommendations. How are their wolves doing? What they need? Do they have space constraints? Do they would like to have a breeding pair that year, or they don't have a space for a breeding pair, or someone passed away and they need to clarify something? All of those things get into a conversation, you know, and sometimes we have in person a couple rooms or areas of whoever is hosting that gives us a space to do some in Spanish, some in English, have the Mexican folks together, the US folks, but at the same time, there's crossing between them and making decisions about what has to happen between countries. In this case, because it was online the last 2 years, we had like Zoom rooms, right, going on, one in Spanish, one in English, and then just the coordinator, Kim Scott, would help us would make some decisions, and Ed Spivak, that is a geneticist specialist, and will help us too to know what are the best possible combinations for our pairs. So what are you seeing here is an example of what is a physical poster on the left. When we're in person, we have our big papers, and each of those little post-its are a Mexican wolf, you know? So when we're here in Wolf Haven, for example, in a sanctuary, we get to see the animals in person, right? We get to care for them and get to know them, some a little bit, some that are in the pre-release area, for example, we don't get to know much because the idea is to not see them. But when you go to a meeting, it's mostly about what we do as a species. How do we do the best decisions for this endangered animal? So they become these little papers and numbers, and we have to look at what are their genetics individually and what are the best matches between them. And also what makes sense, not only genetically, but biologically, if there's some behavioral issues, logistically, is it possible to send this female all the way across the country with this male to be paired? Politics can play also a part, and then space constraint, right? As I mentioned, we are really full to capacity. We have been very successful in selecting breeding pairs and housing these animals and caring for them. So now what we need, and I'm gonna touch on that in a little bit, is more space for Mexican wolves, or as Erin and Aspen mentioned, just opportunities and more territory for them to be released into the wild. This is just an example of the eggs here that you see is that male and that female that were recommended for breeding and had those pups that you saw in the video. These are the pups, the males and the females, and 2 older brothers from previous year. And then what happens? Well, if they, let's say, select that a pair needs to be put together between 2 different facilities, it gets decided what's the best spot for them to mate, or sometimes they both have to be sent out to a pre-release facility, for example. So there's gonna be a lot of domestic and international transfers. And this is a photo of a Mexican wolf family that started here at Wolf Haven, and then they had their first litter, and when she was ready to breed again with the male, they were sent to a pre-release facility in New Mexico, Ladder Ranch, and so we had to catch them up, send them out. Big shout out to Alaska Cargo. In the case of Wolf Haven, they have been super helpful and nice, and Lighthawk, who are some volunteer pilots that give their time and resources to move endangered wolves around. And this is enclosure where that family went to live for a little while she was about to whelp. That in the middle there you see is Maggie Dwyer, and she works for the Mexican Wolf Recovery Program. And I just wanted to show this photo not only because she's super important, has been super supportive of the wolves and all the SSPs, but to show how, you know, alone nobody can do much, and we need a collaborative effort. So that was a giant enclosure that we had to get a bunch of people together, or they had to be able to catch up these animals for a release. So this is people from all kinds of places. You have people here from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, from Arizona Game and Fish Department, from some SSP institutions like Wolf Haven. Wendy Spencer, our Director of Operations, and I had the pleasure and honor to go down there to help them. We had folks from local facilities. We had veterinarians. We had maybe some ranching communities that were participating too. And as it says here, like, it's not only a job for like what we sometimes call the specialists of Mexican wolves, you know, like in this case, in this photo, these folks are really seasoned in the Mexican wolf topic, but we also are going to encounter folks along the way in this transfer route and the release route that have nothing to do with the Mexican wolf, have probably never seen one, and you need to learn how to work with all of these people because each of them are important part of making this happen. This is actually at the border with Mexico. We have the whole family of 11 in these crates. It's mom, dad, and 9 offspring. And this gentleman here had never seen a wolf. They barely had heard about Mexican wolves probably, and they work at the border, and they were not only helping us with paperwork, but were very curious about what was happening. And of course, you gotta also understand a little bit of cultural differences and legal differences, even not only like locally, but also between countries. That's when we were about to cross the border. And the folks on the ground, once you release the wolves, these are students and volunteers and researchers from the University of Querétaro, Autonomous University of Querétaro, and helping us there. They are the main field team right now, monitoring the wild wolves in Mexico. So there are a lot of areas of opportunity for research and cooperation. So there are reproductive opportunities. You can do a lot of research about fertility, a lot of, we also bank gametes to have them available for potential future use for the conservation of these endangered species. We can do behavioral research, nutritional, you know, even what are the best diets for these animals? Is it okay actually to feed them dry food or kibble? How can that harm their digestive systems? Husbandry and handling. This is an example. In the photo, you see Fernanda Moran from that University of Querétaro and Carlos Lopez. He is the lead biologist researcher for monitoring the wolves in the wild in Mexico. And they came to help us with a catch-up here. And so exchanging information, exchanging experience, educational opportunities, of course. We can do all kinds of programs, and even now online is easier to reach more people. And I wanna just mention a few colleagues from Mexico that are really advancing the program. They are all part of the management group for the SSP, and we are very honored to collaborate with them. On the left, you have Xochitl Ramos, and she is now the co-chair in Mexico for the SSP program. On your right, you have Ana Diaz from Umacuatepec Arenas. Wonderful veterinarians, both of them. Actually, also Fausto and Herbert are both wonderful veterinarians. In the left, you have Fausto here at Wolf Haven attending a wildlife handling class. And there are other SSP institutions that have these opportunities. And then your Wolf Center in St. Louis, Missouri is about to host a workshop in October and also one in November for handling and capturing of Mexican wolves. So what are some opportunities that we have looking into the future as collaborative efforts keep advancing and more new generations are very interested in working with preserving these endangered species, right? I'm gonna say them in Spanish, these ones. Necesitamos más espacio, por supuesto, en instituciones para el SSP del lobo mexicano. No solo más espacio, sino que los encierros sean más grandes, estén en mejores condiciones y que estén lejos de actividad humana. Necesitamos mejorar el cuidado y el manejo de los lobos. Tenemos que considerar que la mayoría, si no todos, la mayoría de estos lobos son candidatos a liberación y que son individuos súper inteligentes socialmente y complejos, que hay que tratarlos como tal. Expander las áreas de networking, ¿no? En diferentes ciencias. No sirve de nada tratar de preservar al lobo si no hay hábitat donde ponerlo o si las comunidades locales no están de acuerdo en tener al lobo y no reconocen su valor. Más colaboración entre los diferentes países, ¿no? Entre los dos países. Entonces necesitamos invertir más en el intercambio de información, experiencias y la comunicación abierta y honesta, porque estamos juntos en esto. Y siempre recordando que hay que entender y honrar y celebrar nuestras diferencias culturales. Now, I'm going to say two tangible needs are money and language inclusion. I wanted to say something very pragmatic too, right? That is not just all on paper. So there's a clear funding needed for all these little points here that I'll say them in Spanish. Necesitamos recursos, dinero, para hacer más encierros y que estén más grandes y en mejores condiciones. Necesitamos recursos económicos para poder cubrir gastos de viajes de los lobos que son transferidos, pero también gastos de viajes para los profesionales que trabajan con lobos y que puedan ir de un lado a otro para recibir entrenamiento, proveer soporte mientras cachamos a un animal o también para aprender de otras instituciones e intercambiar nuestras experiencias. Necesitamos dinero para más investigación, para nuevos sitios de liberación, sobre todo en México, si es que los hay, si es posible. Necesitamos más dinero para operaciones de reintroducción y también para el monitoreo de lobos, porque se tiene que mantener cierto monitoreo para saber qué está pasando con las poblaciones que fueron liberadas. Y que no se olvide que hablamos español. And I'm saying, don't forget to speak Spanish because, you know, we've noticed that we all are very inclusive and try to embrace the folks on the other side of the physical border. But we have to consider that if the information, the documents, what we provide is not available also in Spanish, or at least we don't try to make it so. There is a clear barrier there, and only a small fraction of the colleagues in Mexico are going to be able to, you know, contribute in the same amount or will feel comfortable enough to do it. So we got to keep investing on that. I think we're doing a good job, and it's getting better each year. And to end, I want to just say that ultimately what we're here is to see these animals released into the wild, right? There's no point on keep bringing them if they cannot see freedom. And I wanted to include this photo of Wendy. You can see how happy she is. That's those animals that I showed in the previous photos. We got there to the mountains in Northwest Mexico, and then we had to carry these crates up into some rocky terrain. It was very interesting. We did the best we could. And then we were all ready for releasing these animals. So this is a little clip of one of the offspring leaving the crate. You can see the radio collar there. And this is a a clip that courtesy of the field team from the University of Querétaro in Mexico, Carlos Lopez, they gave us this, their field team was able to capture the family roaming in the mountains of Mexico a few days later. So also a big shout out to them. You know, in the field in Mexico, there's even trickier things one has to face compared to the field in the US. It's already hard work, but there's other elements that are really tough over there. So great job to all of you. And with that, we open for questions. I want to offer my email in case anyone has a particular question, but I also checked with the coordinator of the SSP, Kim Scott, the Mexican Wolf Ssp, if I could offer some kind of contact, and she gave us her email. So it's right there, kim.scott@cincinnatizoo.org. So yeah.
Thank you, Pam and Aaron and Aspen. I always just get so excited seeing those wolves in the wild. I'm always just so happy that I work with Wolf Haven and partnering groups. I do want to say before you ended with those exciting videos, the picture of Wendy with the big smile, a lot of you don't know who Wendy is. Wendy Spencer is our director of operations that lived on premises at our Tenino facility for years and years. Again, we were founded as a nonprofit in 1982. And I can't, don't quote me on this exactly, but I know she's been there since probably 1995 or something. But what I did fail to mention that is super exciting, she is out at our sister satellite facility in Montana, which is about, again, I don't want to say miles, but somewhere between Bridger and Red Lodge, Montana is where that other facility is located. We acquired that approximately 3 years ago, and please, Pamela, if I'm saying anything incorrect, you can correct me. That facility is not open to the public, and it has such a wonderful story. This is actually a presentation that Wendy should do at some point as far as another future partner webinar. It's the Mccleary Wolves, so if anybody wants to, I can type in something, or maybe Faye wants to type in the Mccleary Wolves. I believe it's MCLEERY, or maybe, is that correct? Okay. And it was a doctor from Kane, Pennsylvania in the 20s. And when there were these predator control programs that were eradicating all the wolves out of the lower 48, he was buying wolf pups from the US Fish and Wildlife Service and putting them into preservation. So that's how this facility that Wolf Haven now has, a sister facility, actually started. Obviously, the Dr. Mccleary had long since passed away, and his family began to run it, and they got old, and so on and so forth. So now Wendy is out there running it single-handed. Obviously, she has some community members that are able to help, but it's a wonderful story historically and what Wendy's doing out there. So I just wanted to really be sure that that was understood. And like I said, I think Wendy should do a program about that sometime. Not to pressure her. I know she's back there somewhere tonight. Okay. And now we're ready for our Q&A. Thank you.
All right. So I just have a one task for all of our viewers out there today to do for me, and then I will get to the questions that are in the chat and in the Q&A section. If you have a question, feel free to stick it in either one of those and I'll follow it and get it to our panelists. But first, I need you all to do me a favor and just stick in the chat how many people are sitting with you at your computer or your phone or whatever device it is that you're watching us on. If you're able to, just stick the number in the chat real quick for us. That gives us a pretty good count to see who all we have watching, how many we've got, just because I know that a lot of us are probably not sitting by ourselves in front of our computers. So thank you for that. And so, yeah, Ski, you're muted, Ski.
Also, it'd be really interesting to know where you're from, what state you're from. Cool, thank you.
And so, like I said, if you have a question or anything, you are very welcome to stick it in the chat or in the Q&A. And I want to say thanks to our panelists. That was fabulous. And I always enjoy learning more about wolves. So we'll get to some questions. One of the first questions we had that came up was, how do people get wild wolves to the zoo? So I think, I'm not sure who wants to take that one, but I think it's kind of, how do we get wolves at the zoo kind of a question. Pam, go ahead.
Really in general, the Mexican Wolf Ssp is, as I mentioned before, a captive breeding program. So these wolves are born in captivity within these SSP institutions. There's going to be the rare case where a wolf from the wild has to be pulled back or pulled out of the wild and bring into captivity because of the predation issues, habituation issues. But in general, the big majority are going to be just born to Mexican wolves inside the breeding program.
So these guys, for the most part, are already in zoos when they come, when they're in zoos. Thanks, Pam.
Or sanctuaries like Wolf Haven.
Yeah. Let's see. I know that Casey had a question. Casey has left, so hopefully we can get Casey the answer to their question. But is 9 pups normal? And are they adopted or adoptable? Pam, my Spanish is a little rusty on which one that is.
Let me see it real quick.
Adoptados?
Okay, adoptados. That means if they are adopted by the mom. So let me see who did this question.
That was Casey.
Federico. Okay. Hola, Casey. I'll say it real quick in English and then in Spanish. In this case, all these 9 wolves and then the 8 that survived were born to Vida and Coyote. There were no adopted pups in there. We were very impressed by the size of the litter. We have seen that in the past, the average used to be 4 to 6 pups per litter. And in the last couple of years or 3 years, we've seen that increase like a lot. So this is not the only very large litter born to the Mexican Wolf program last year. There were a few others in different facilities. I believe one had the record with 11. So yeah, very crazy. I'll say it in Spanish. Sí, estos 9 cachorros, de hecho, nacieron de Vida y el padre Cochi. Ninguno fue adoptado de otra madre, otra manada. Y antes veíamos que las manadas promedio, las camadas promedio, perdón, son entre 4 y 6 cachorros. Y últimamente, en los últimos años, se ha visto que esto ha aumentado. Y ahora son más como de 7, 8, 9. Incluso hubo una en México, creo, de 11 cachorros.
Thanks, Pam. Esther asked, do you buy land to give wolves space? I think that's probably pertaining to, do we buy land for wild wolves to have space? Erin, do you want to take that one?
Sure, great question, Esther. So there are actually organizations that do that. They'll work with landowners and set aside natural preserves. This happens both in the United States and Mexico. So our organization doesn't directly do that, but we're working with some organizations that do. I will also say that at least in the United States, the area where Mexican wolves are is primarily public land. So I think that's important to be aware of too. It's mostly national forest land. And there are some tribal lands and private lands that are interspersed in there as well. That's really different than the situation in Mexico, where most of the land is private land, and Mexican wolf recovery is possible through partnerships with private landowners. So we believe it's really important to work with people living and working in the areas where wolves are returning, because it's wild space, but it's also a working landscape as well. So anything we can do across nationalities, across borders, to make sure that we're recognizing the diversity of land and the diversity of communities, and making those welcoming spaces for both people and wildlife is really important.
Thanks, Erin. We had another question. What is the coyote's role in nature and why do we have coyotes at Wolf Haven? And I think I'm going to throw this one to Ski.
So the coyote's role in nature is rodent control. So I know coyotes are very adaptable and they live among us in urban settings. And obviously people get very upset if a coyote kills your small dog or your cat because that's a family member. And then in turn, maybe you think I want to kill all the coyotes because it's killed, you know, my cat, and I don't like coyotes. But what you'll see if you eradicate all the coyotes, there's going to be a big population explosion of rats and gophers, and really the coyote's role in nature and the ecosystem is to keep that rodent population at bay. And we have coyotes at Wolf Haven. As I've been stating, Wolf Haven is a sanctuary for captive-born wolves. But the two coyotes that we do have were actually animals that were born in the wild. They're not related, but they were both found as orphan puppies for different situations. An example, one situation was a family had a large dog that attacked Cody, who was 3 months old approximately at the time. And thankfully the family, you know, reported that their dog had attacked this coyote pup. Cody went to a rehab facility because obviously he was born in the wild. And we want to have him live a wild life. Anything born in the wild, you don't want to be putting in captivity. But after being in rehab for a while and knowing he had a little limp and such, we knew that it wasn't going to be a good idea to release him in the wild. He wasn't really fit. He was in rehab for so long. We did have space at Wolf Haven to have him. Thank you.
Thanks, Ski. Let's see, there's another one. Nova wants to know, how is climate change affecting your operations? And I'm not sure if Nova is talking about as the SSP or as Lobos of the Southwest and as Wolf Haven. Erin, do you want to?
I can speak a little bit to the wild side of things. So I think we are seeing a lot of wildlife change and in some cases expand or in some cases decrease their ranges because of climate change. With wolves, we are starting to see more movement northward, north of that Interstate 40 boundary that I mentioned. And that's one of the challenges with policies like the existing 10J rule, is that it bars wolves politically from moving into area that has really good habitat. So as climate change continues to progress, I think we need to recognize that wildlife ranges are going to change as well. And that's one of the changes we'd love to see in the 10J rule when it is revised, is just acknowledging that climate change is a reality and that we need to ensure that wildlife continue to have spaces that are protected and where they can thrive and survive. And I'm not sure if there's an SSP. I think different SSP facilities are in different locations throughout the United States and Mexico. We've got about 64 facilities. So those that may be in more coastal cities may be experiencing climate change in a very different way than those in the desert, than those in the mountains. So there's a lot of variation probably in terms of how that's going to affect the captive breeding program.
Thanks, Erin. I know that as far as like at Wolf Haven, it changes kind of how things are managed a little bit, but that's based on the wolf's changes to temperature, to daylight, to things like that. So, okay. Nova also wants to know, what in your opinions motivates people to want to protect wild wolves? Do you guys all want to add to that?
The first thing I thought was a little bit more of an emotive answer. I think so many folks just view wolf as a spiritual, you know, kind of a mysterious, you know, bigger, larger than life animal, as opposed to maybe, I can't even think of an example, but maybe other animals out there. There's just something about the wolf that just seems very spiritual to people. So, and then you hear a lot of folklore of native tribes and such, and how that applied to a lot of native tribes with them honoring the wolf.
Any other thoughts on that from the panelists?
I think for me, I think I totally agree with Steve, but for me, it also comes down to hope, acknowledging that we've learned things and looking ahead to a future where we can make a difference. And I think wolves are one of those species where we do have a chance to make a difference for their futures and for ours. And those futures are linked. So I view the story of wolf eradication and intolerance, and then this transition into this future where we recognize that they can and should be protected, and we should find ways to coexist with them, as a story about hope. And I think that's really inspiring for me. And I always have to remember that the work isn't done, that there's a lot still to do. But the reason that we get up every day and do this work is that we can make a difference, and eventually we will succeed.
I'll speak a little bit from my Mexican origin. You know, for us, it's part of our history. For the land we come from, they were there before us, and it's sad to have seen them gone. And I think a lot of folks and new generations want to see them back and reestablished, and see their ecosystems also protected. And as a key species, we know that they also are going to affect everything around them in a big manner. So it's a big deal for us as Mexicans, especially, to be protecting this important carnivore.
Thanks, Pam and Aaron and Ski. We've got another comment about, let's see if I can get back up here to it. Basically starting a request for, can we start a national petition to create a law, not the ESA, making it a felony to harm a wolf? I think most of us would probably agree that that would be great. I don't know that that's realistic. It'd be nice to not harm. It'd be nice to not harm an animal with the intent to harm an animal for every animal. But I don't know how realistic that is. There's another question about that Jean had. Any thoughts about the differences in red and Mexican wolf recovery programs? It seems like the collaborative efforts for Mexican wolves are very helpful. Anybody available as a human cross foster to help the red wolves? Pam, do you want to take that one, kind of as hands in both those SSPs? You're muted.
Can you repeat the last part of the question?
Anybody available as a human cross foster? So I think she's just asking about, you know, more availability to help with those red wolves, I think is kind of the.
I mean, I gotta say, like, you know, we're all evolving in different conservation programs and different institutions. And the Mexican wolf actually learned a lot from the red wolf program. And they did a lot of the things before, and the Mexican wolf program learned from them. So it's been both ways. And now there's some things that the Mexican wolf program has learned that can bring back to the red wolf SSP, but there's a good conversation going on. And not only different facilities participate in both, and then they get to sit together in different meetings and talk about it. But we're also planning, this is like a big news, our Mexican Wolf SSP in 2023 is going to be a joint SSP meeting with the Red Wolf program. So there's going to be even more collaboration in person, hopefully in person. We'll see how things go. But meanwhile, I think communication exists. There are people that work in these places taking care of the animals, going to different facilities, but it definitely can still improve. And so I, recommend that if anyone listening in the audience is interested in volunteering, helping in any way, just contact. Like, you can look it up online, look at these facilities, their contact info, reach out and find a way that you can participate, and connect more between the different groups.
Thanks, Pam. Let's see. Connie wants to know if the border wall has affected any of the movement of the Mexican wolves. I know what the answer would be if it was a complete wall, but does anybody know if it's, I don't know that it's near where they are, the part that was completed. Pam?
I mean, it definitely has affected the flow, the flux of wildlife in general. You know, it's yeah, really bad news. In terms of paperwork and that, not really, like, because these animals, in terms of the SSP, captive breeding population, that's different, because these animals are gonna use either, you know, flights, they're gonna go in a plane, or they're gonna be in a vehicle and use a road. But the wild population gets severely affected. And if the wall continues to be built along, that's gonna have further effects, very, very tangible effects of the genetic flow that needs to happen. Like Erin mentioned it, one of the big things that we need to encourage and support and you know, make sure it happens is that the population in the US has some way of connectivity with the population in Mexico. So the border wall is a very clear stop for that. I don't know if Erin, you want to add something?
Yeah, just a brief story that I think it was in one of our slides, that in 2017, there was a wolf that came north from Mexico into the United States, actually had to go all the way around a solid section of the border wall, and then ended up back in Mexico on the other side. So that happened in New Mexico. So it definitely has happened before. It will continue to happen. And I think connectivity both across the national border and connectivity through national forests and through different land jurisdictions in both the United States and Mexico remains critical for Mexican gray wolf recovery.
Thank you both for that. So Isabella asked if, let's see, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service seems to have poor track record when it comes to wolves, past and present. How do you entrust that they will truly be on the side of wolf conservation? Anybody want to tackle that one?
I think it's a tough question. You know, I've worked with a lot of people in agencies at federal, state, tribal levels, and there are a lot of people doing good work on the ground. So just acknowledging that biologists are conservationists and they do actually care about the futures of the animals. I think it's kind of up to us as members of communities to speak out in what we want to see in our wildlife conservation. So I think I would almost turn that back around on us and onto the conservation community, that it's kind of up to us to ensure that our agencies are upholding that public trust and are protecting wildlife. Agencies have legal responsibilities and regulatory responsibilities, but we as community members have voices, and we should never forget that our voices have power and we need to use them.
Thanks, Erin.
And I would add to remind folks that these agencies have limited resources, and like in Mexico, it's very clear, you know, there's gonna, the bigger government is gonna allocate different resources to the different agencies. And sometimes there's not even like enough to keep the monitoring level as we would like it, you know, to have enough staff, to have enough support, enough equipment. So there's different reasons, and not only what Erin mentioned, but like as a community member, you can also, you know, volunteer in other ways and work with the local people to increase awareness and better the information that is available out there.
And to continue the stream of Erin and Pam, I think we need to be really mindful not to demonize and dehumanize the other side. We don't want to have the us and them marginalized view of things, such as the Fish and Wildlife Service or WGFW. You know, biologists or sharpshooters were told to go shoot wolves. I think we need to be sure that we, like Erin said, talking to folks that she's met in the different agencies, everything's communication. And as a foundation this evening, with you attending, this is, you know, the beginning, again, just throwing that stone into the pond, and we can expand upon that communication and always listening to the other side and never just assuming, you know, that the other side has an agenda, just cutting somebody off, always having that open communication, and be very mindful to not have an us and them dichotomy. let's all come together and talk about the issues with wolves, or any issue.
Thank you all for that. Let's see. So DW asked, as humans start to see how beneficial wolves are in the US, is the mindset changing about the Mexican gray wolves starting to sway in favor of them on the landscape in Mexico?
That is a tricky question, and I wish I didn't see Carlos Lopez connected. I don't think he was able to make it. He was working in the field, but so one thing is having the general population being more support of predator conservation, but we gotta always keep in mind that these animals, their habitat is not necessarily super close to these folks supporting these conservation programs. So it's still a long ways to go. The local communities, some of them may be in favor, but some of them may not. And then you reintroduce a species that, you know, as we know, is very mobile and has very large territories. So as they expand their territory and they also reproduce and more packs come to be and expand the territory, they can start touching on other areas that there may be not enough support. So it's always very tricky. And in Mexico, especially, we don't have as much preserved land available for these conservation projects like there is in the US. You know, a lot of it is really divided and private land. And then there's tricky areas where you cannot safely go through. So yeah, it's complicated. I would say for sure the new generations are more invested in understanding and protecting all these species.
Thanks, Pam. Let's see. Pam, if you want to take a look, there's a question in the Q&A in Spanish, and I do not want to butcher it. In the meantime, while Pam is looking at that, Rebecca asked, how can we most effectively communicate to the Biden administration that wolves need to be added back to the federal ESA? So maybe Erin or Ski? Erin, you want to take a shot at that?
Sure, yeah. For tonight, I'll offer an easy way. The Endangered Species Coalition has a petition that's asking the Biden administration to relist gray wolves. And we are looking forward over the next couple months about more ways to raise public awareness about the issues and to encourage the Biden administration to relist. So it's not going to be an easy task, but there are some simple things you can do, like signing a petition. You can absolutely contact your representatives and show people what you would like to see happening when it comes to wildlife conservation in the United States. So again, remember, you have a voice, and it's up to each one of us to speak up and tell the administration what we would like. I know it can feel frustrating when it seems like we are speaking up sometimes, and maybe those voices are not always being heard. But it does make a difference if you do make those calls, send those emails, sign those petitions, and those are usually simple things that each of us can do. I think there will be some events coming up later this year as well to raise more awareness about relisting and the need to ensure that protection remains for gray wolves, especially in areas where we have very small wolf populations or wolves are just starting to recover, or we've got excellent wolf habitat, but wolves haven't made it there yet. They haven't had a chance to recolonize and recover in certain areas.
Thanks, Erin. Pam?
Are you meaning the comment from Ana Diaz de la Vega at 737?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's actually a comment, not a question. And she's saying, congratulations for this webinar, for the passion and love that it's shared for this objective. And she's sending hugs to everyone. Ana Diaz de la Vega is actually one of the management group members.
Gracias.
All right, we've got we've got 4 questions. I think we'll call it at these 4. If anybody else has questions after tonight, please feel free to email. I wonder, we'll figure out an easy way to put emails back up. So Nova wants to know, back in the 80s, I worked in Minnesota to get the timber wolf listed as an endangered species. What do you know about their status? Anybody know about the timber wolves in Minnesota?
Go on, Erin.
I was just going to say, as far as I know, they're still considered under the gray wolf species and were covered by the delisting decision that took effect in January of this year.
Yeah, last I knew, Minnesota has had hunts based on their own numbers and their own delisting, but they are delisted right now. I'm not sure what the hunt situation looks like in Minnesota. I know it's happening in Wisconsin, but I'm not sure what it's looking like in Minnesota. Thanks, Erin. A comment just came in about why would it be unrealistic to have the wolves being harmed be a felony, the bald eagle, to harm a bald eagle is a felony. I think the main reason that makes it unrealistic is that wolves are more polarizing and more dividing than the bald eagle. The wolves affect almost every individual different, and there seems to be very divided sides, especially when you start to get into politics, whereas the eagle wasn't quite isn't as divisive. Pam?
I also think it's important to mention that when these animals get listed and protected, there are certain goals. Either we agree or not with them, but there are certain goals in population in different areas that are set. And once those goals get accomplished, they consider that that has been done and they remove the protection. So I'm saying not whether we agree or not, that's a different story, but there is a reason for putting certain objectives with this population. So it is considered that as a general gray wolf population in the US, those goals have been met and the numbers are big enough. And that was one of the reasons why the protection was lost.
And a comment came in too that part of it might have been the push behind the American symbol being the US symbol being the bald eagle, and that might have helped with the push. And so the government was a little bit more driven to protect the eagles, and it's very possible. Ski, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just piggybacking on what Pamela was saying, at first the states will have a conservation plan, and then as Pamela said, once the goals have been met, it moves into a management plan. So that comes into it. In a perfect world, in a utopia, in the world I would like to live in, things could be so simple as to make one single law that we can't harm wolves, but unfortunately, we live in a complex world, and as we've discussed, the difference between the bald eagle and the wolf is a much more complicated subject because they do predate on livestock compared to the eagle. So I wish things could be so simple. And maybe if as humanity we simplified, they could be, but that's a bit of evolution ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Ski. Pam?
And one more thing to add for wolf is that I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Wolf, sorry, is that another thing that the bald eagle has going is the Migratory Bird Act. So they are also under that wing, pun intended.
All right, so one of the questions that's coming in from Deborah, is there a reason why Mexican gray wolves stay only in Mexico and Arizona and not travel farther north?
Erin, you just published that article of Lobos of the Southwest about that story. Ambus?
Yes, so the short answer is they can and do travel farther north. We have had several wolves, I think at least 9 wolves travel north of Interstate 40, so up into northern Arizona, and they could go farther if they're allowed to. Someday we hope that we will have a connected population of wolves throughout the western United States, from Alaska through Canada, through the northern Rockies, the southern Rockies, into the Southwest and into Mexico. That habitat exists, it is possible. It's just up to us humans to allow wolves to be in those spaces. So there is some information up on MexicanWolves.org right now about a specific wolf named Anubis, and who was actually named by 7th graders, which is actually going to get to Deborah's next question, I think, about how we teach young people about wolves and to appreciate wolves and other wildlife. So these 7th graders named this wolf with this inspiring story about Anubis. And it's one of the amazing parts of being part of Lobos of the Southwest and this community trying to work together to recover Mexican gray wolves. These animals can live anywhere that will allow them to live, and they are capable of traveling hundreds to thousands of miles. So right now, Anubis is up in that area again, and we are rooting for him as he continues his journey and hopefully finds a home and maybe a pack of his own. So we're really excited for him. And it's really the reason this doesn't happen more often is that there are political boundaries in place, and wolves that travel north of that political boundary are often captured and translocated or brought back into the experimental population area. And that was actually something that happened to Anubis. He was captured and he was relocated, and he decided that he wanted to be back where he'd been taken from. So he's on his way back. We're pulling for him. As for Deborah's question about teaching young people, I think that you're absolutely right. There is a lot of negativity about wolves in the media and popular culture. So I think it's up to those of us who want to counter that to provide alternatives and dispel myths about wolves and share facts about wolves, and also try to cultivate some inspiring love for wolves. We do an annual pup naming contest where we share some activities that are appropriate for various age groups. We've got them broken down by curriculum basics. So fun activities for kids. These are all free. I'm going to drop a link into the chat that anybody, teachers, parents, family members, friends, please feel free to share these with the young wolf biologists in your life, because it's definitely an important thing to inspire future generations and show them that sometimes what we see about wildlife in the movies or on TV, or what we might read about in stories or fairy tales or folk tales, isn't always accurate. So I think teaching accurate information is one way to do that. And I would also suggest that another way to do that is to get kids out into nature. They may not see a wolf in the wild. It's really difficult to see wolves in the wild, but maybe they'll see other wildlife, and they'll be inspired to learn more about plants and animals and the way ecosystems work, and the way that every species in an ecosystem is important for the way that area functions. They can also visit zoos and conservation centers and sanctuaries, places like Wolf Haven, and have an up close and personal experience with wildlife. And I think that's often a way, that personal connection is often a way that some of us, especially those of us who live in cities, have a way to connect with animals and to start to learn about and to care about animals. And maybe it starts small like that, but maybe it turns into something bigger. I know I grew up in a city, and it was because my parents took me to zoos. It was because they took me out into nature, hiking, camping, that I ended up working in the field of conservation. So I think if you start young and you give kids opportunities to learn, they are very curious and they're very intelligent, and they're going to understand that there's a big wide world out there and there's a lot of information to absorb. And I think they'll be the future heroes of conservation.
Hey, Faye. I would like to add something from an experience with a local elementary school. We were teaching to first and second graders. It's not preschoolers, but first and second graders is the experience I had. It's a bilingual school, mostly Spanish. And the way we tackled it is that, especially because our talks were at the end of the day. So also imagine they were super tired and ready to go home to go play. So we chose 3 concepts and that they could relate to, that were also very relevant to the lives of the Mexican wolves. And we made a story about a Mexican wolf family, and the three concepts were home or territory, family, which is a pack, and food, right? And all of these 3 things, like, you need them as a little kid, and they can relate to, you know, a house or a home, food, and your family. And we had some photos of some families that they could connect to visually. And we just went over these concepts, showing videos and photos that the wolves also use that, and that seemed to work really well so far. So we're also happy to share with you guys Deborah Lake. If you wanted to reach out to Faye at education@wolfhaven.org, we have some programs that we can, you know, facilitate. We have this one that is also with Spanish parts. So yeah, happy to help.
And I'll say, as an educator, the one thing that I've done with preschoolers is just introduce them to a new animal. I've got a preschool program that talks about senses, and you kind of build a mask and arts and crafts stuff. But even just showing them, we've got replica skulls that I take in and just talk to them. But we talk about wolves just like we talk about any other animal. We don't highlight the scary stuff or the not scary stuff. It's here's a wolf, here's a bear, here's a deer, and just introducing them in general to animals, and showing them the true side, not the movie side. I think that helps. Ski?
Yeah, and I'll just sum that up with saying, as Pamela described the experience that she had, she mentioned the food and the pack is the family and the home. And it's really, especially the younger you get, is having them identify themselves as a human with different animals. So as a human, we need shelter and homes, and we need our family, and we need food. So I think to build that sense of empathy early on, having them relate, sort of like the videos that I just showed in my program about body language and how analogous we can think about our body language, because we are human animals. I mean, we're not wolves, but we're human animals. And so just to kind of have the kids understand, maybe they've seen just a National Geographic or maybe just something on the internet or TV of wolves killing deer. So, that's their experiences. Wolves kill these deer, and that's awful, and that's scary. So just having them relate to wolves as a pack family.
All right, let's see. Isabella's got a question. Everyone's doing hard work to bring all wolves back from possible extinction, but how do you counter people like the governors of Montana and Idaho? This may get a little thick. The trophy hunting and killing contest, this is something we're facing in Michigan. So anybody want to start taking that one on? And I say it's a little bit thick because you get into the politics of it and it gets difficult.
It's a tricky last question tonight too, because again, as I stated earlier, it's all about communication and what's happening on the ground and why it's happening, and what's happening with these ranchers and their livestock and the department. There's so many different branches that need the people on the ground need to come to the table. We can't just sit here again and give a simplistic answer. It's a discussion. It's a webinar for another evening, but that's the point of this webinar is thank you for the question. And that's how it begins, to work towards peace best we can.
And if I may add something, Faye, I always think about it like, to me, there's two areas, of my brain when I think of protecting these animals. There's the big picture, and we would like to see these animals protected, across the whole nation, across the borders, across the continent. But also, there are nuances that we don't have control over, and we cannot just assume that we can come and tell other states how to handle their own laws and their way of life. So you gotta keep the big picture and the big ideal and work towards it, but work with your local communities, because that's what's gonna make the biggest change.
Thanks, Pam and Ski. And Madison threw one more question in there for us, and I think it's a good one to end on. Madison asked, what do we all enjoy most about our involvement in organizations? How has it impacted our lives positively? And they admire our work and are interested in getting involved. I would say, as far as the getting involved, check out our websites. We've all got different how you can get involved with each individual organization separately, or I'm sure Lobos has like what you can do to get involved in your local area, like we do too. So, but as far as what do you enjoy most about the involvement in your organization, let's start with Ski.
Really just connecting with humanity, as you can tell by many of my answers this evening. I think I love wolves, and I love the staff that I work with at Wolf Haven. I've been there, I think, since about 2006. And one reason I haven't left, it's not just for the wolves, is because it is the people doing really, really good, meaningful, purposeful work, and just having a reason to wake up in the morning that is yeah, just from your heart and mind alignment. I know this is getting a little esoteric, but yeah, it's hard to step away from such good work. I'm just proud to be around that energy.
Thanks, Ski. Erin?
I think my answer is pretty similar. I think I've gone from roles working directly with animals to roles working more with people and a little bit in between. And each step of the way, you know, you feel like you're making a difference. So I would absolutely encourage you in whatever ways make sense in your lives to get involved. For some people, it's writing an email or making a phone call. For some people, it's volunteering. For some people, it's making a donation. So for some people, it's talking to their friends and their family and their coworkers about how much you love wolves. So whatever you choose to do, definitely get involved in the ways that you would like to be involved. You will feel like you are making a difference, even on the days that are tough, the days that are challenging, the days that feel frustrating, like there's so much work still to do. You're making a difference in the lives of animals and you're making a difference in the lives of people. And that's the most rewarding feeling in the world.
Thanks, Erin. Pam?
Well, like I tend to be a person, like on the other side, I'm less inclined to people in general. So I admire a lot the wolves as beings themselves, and taking care of them on a daily basis. You get to learn a lot about their particularities, right? And learning about them also shows you about you and how to, you know, grow and do better in your job and as a person, as a community member. So I could mention different things about how beautiful it is to hear them howl, things like that, but ultimately these wolves should not be in captivity. And at the end of the day, if I could choose not see them any again ever, but that they would be free and they wouldn't have to go through this, I would choose that. So I would say ultimately what I would like to do most is keep connecting with folks like you guys, and just as Erin said and as Ski said, find ways that we could keep doing better as a human being, and just look around you, what you do every day, every time you wake up, and how, you know, you can do a little bit more for all the beings around you. Oh, and volunteer, like in a more pragmatic sense, when especially young folks from schools ask me, like, how do you get to this? Volunteer, 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 volunteer. Pick a spot, pick your local spot, or drive an hour and volunteer to the place that you want the most. Volunteer, get to know them and let them get to know you, and opportunities come and your different skill sets are going to take you in the right direction.
Yeah, you know, I love to feed off my co-partners' answers. I think that whether it's wolves or any animals, working in an animal world really actually makes you a better human, because you're seeing, you know, day to day what caretaking is and what it is to, you know, educate other people and communicate to other people about these animals. I think just bottom line, it makes you a better human, because what is important, going shopping, or, you know, so you get the idea, but I mean, it's just, you really focus on what's important. It helps you stay aligned and sincere.
Aspen, are you where you can chime in on this one too?
Yeah, no, not to be repetitive, but I always find the most rewarding aspect of doing any of this is either simply changing someone's mind about previous thoughts they had on a wild canid like a wolf, or I do a lot of work with coyotes in North Carolina. So just seeing that mindset change, you can see in their eyes sometimes, just realizing these animals are actually wonderful and good for the environment, that we have a duty to protect them. I would just say that it can be as simple as advocating for animals on like a Facebook page that your neighbor posts about. I see all the time, like, oh, this coyote, this fox is out during the day, it must be rabid. It's just simple as saying, oh, this is not true, here's why, or this isn't likely true, here's why. Just doing your part to kind of showcase these animals as the vital species that they are. Just even changing one person's mind, or showing someone the truth is just well worth it, and you're doing your part for the wildlife.
Thanks, Aspen. For me, working at Wolf Haven is kind of a full circle. Wolf Haven is actually what inspired me to go work in wildlife when I was a kid. And so to be able to inspire somebody else to do the same, even just to introduce them to it, I think that's about the best thing that I get out of working there. So anybody have anything else that any of the panelists want to add? Lots of thank yous and things in the chat. Thank you all for joining us tonight, all of our viewers. Really appreciate you sticking with us till all the questions and things got answered as well. And Pam, can you or Aspen put up that contact? Can you share that contact one real quick, the contact slide where it has the websites and things like that? I think it was the last slide in the program, just so if anybody wants to catch any of that down again. I know though you can also Google Lobos of the Southwest and Wolf Haven and get any of our contacts off of there too. So
Pam,
Erin, are you on it?
Aspen,
I can
yeah.
do. Anyone can. Okay, let me get it. Let me
Yeah.
get it real fast. All
thanks,
right.
Aspen.
Yes, of course. All right, there we go. Can we see it?
Yep, there we go. So there's the websites for Lobos of the Southwest and for Wolf Haven International, and you'll find emails and contacts on there as well for all of us. If you've got more questions or if you want to know what else you can do, or just follow both organizations and keep tabs on wolves that way. So thank you all very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Erin and Aspen. It was nice partnering up, and thank all of you for attending. We're really, really grateful. It was a nice evening.
Thank y'all.
Thank you so
Gracias.
much.
Thank you, Faye.
Adiós. Saludos a México también.
Adios.
Adiós.
Yeah.
Excellent Spanish, Ssp.
Gracias, mi amiga.
Hasta luego.